there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen neighbor tries to steal my package. Huge mistake. After that, am I the jerk for printing out a map of the grocery store for my dad? And after that, can't justify paying me? No problem. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to steal her neighbor's package. But that's the highlight of my day. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen neighbor tries to steal my package. Huge mistake. So I had been waiting for my package that cost $700, was waiting for it like a hawk. I got a notification that the package was about 2 stops away, so I started watching live stream of my security camera waiting for the guy to deliver it. Amazon guy came and put a small envelope inside my mailbox, and I saw him take my big box to the neighbor across the street, and I saw that he rang the doorbell. The neighbor came out and they took it in. First, I thought, okay, maybe it's not mine. So I checked my orders and it said, delivered, handed directly to resident. That's when I knew it was in fact my package. I decided to wait about 30 minutes to give the neighbor a chance to bring it back, to just drop it off at my doorstep. But when I saw that she was not returning my package, I got my coat on and went straight to their house, rang the doorbell and said, "Hi, I'm your neighbor from across the street. I saw that Amazon dropped off my package to your house, and it looks like they dropped off yours at mine." The woman immediately said, "Oh, I was confused. I thought my husband had ordered it." It was obvious she had every intention to keep it. The package came in 3 boxes, a really big one, another one sealed inside of it, and then another box, the actual item, inside of that second box. To my surprise, she had already opened the boxes. I don't believe for 1 second that she was confused. The label had my name and address right next to the part where she had to pull off the tape to open the big box. So then, she just wanted to give me the box of the actual item, which thankfully was still sealed. I guess she didn't open that one because she could see what it was and was probably gonna wait to see if anyone would claim it. And I said, no, I'm gonna need the other 2 boxes as well in case I need to return it. I watched her struggling to put all the boxes back into the big box, and then she gave it to me. I gave her her small envelope that Amazon dropped off at my house, untampered and sealed, and said thank you, which I regret saying because not one time did she say sorry or thank you. I bet she's done this before and just keeps packages that aren't hers. But the audacity to receive the package and open it. Had she lied and said she didn't receive it, I would have shown her the security footage, but I gave her no option to say that she didn't receive it. Honestly, if she had opened it by mistake and then brought it back to me apologizing for opening the package because she assumed it was hers, I would have been grateful and said not to worry and thanked her for bringing it back. I gave her the chance and the time to bring it back, but she did not. Now I refer to that house as the House of Thieves. I'd also report the delivery driver that claimed it was delivered and handed directly to resident, since it clearly wasn't. OP. Yeah, I already contacted Amazon. Do you have an HOA you can report your neighbor to? There's no telling how many other packages she's stolen like this. I can't believe the audacity of some people. Who in the right mind would just keep a package that obviously isn't for them? The driver himself really messed up too, and I hope you report him to Amazon. Every time I've reported a driver for being an idiot, I usually don't see them delivering anymore after that, so I'm thinking they get replaced once they get a complaint. I don't know where they find these people, to be honest. They deserve the jump scare they get from my fake rattlesnake that I leave by the front door. Oh, that is so not cool. Amazon drivers are the worst. Like, how hard is it to check the address before you drop off a package? I definitely report them to the higher-ups and be sure to follow up on it. I had a friend that delivered for Amazon, and he said that drivers typically suffer no consequences for their complaints unless you reach out to corporate directly, which will usually result in them getting fired. Call me crazy, but what if she just didn't check the label? Unless I'm expecting a package, I just assume whatever arrives is for my wife, so I leave it in the kitchen somewhere that she will see it. I think you've been reading too many of these Reddit stories, and you might be assuming your neighbors are out to get you. Reddit. The place where being the voice of reason gets you downvoted to heck. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his neighbor? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for printing out a map of the grocery store for my dad? I, 18 female, am the only daughter in a family of 4 boys, 15, 13, 10, and 8. Our dad is pretty much a single parent since he and our mom divorced when the boys were younger, and mom lives out of the country with her husband. It's more or less become my job to be the mother 2.0, which is fine, I guess. I'm doing college online, so it's not like I wouldn't be home to do stuff anyway. One of my unofficial jobs is to help my dad grocery shop. I used to go with him to do it, and I would make the list myself, and I'd just grab whatever we needed. But now that I drive the boys around for their extracurriculars, and I'm busy with school or chores when I'm not helping them, I really don't have the time. I just started writing the list and giving it to my dad so he could go out and get what we needed. Every single time this man has gone to the grocery store by himself, he's either completely forgotten about the list, remembered the list, then lost it, remembered the list but ignored it, or somehow could not find more than half of the things on it. It's hard to cook an actual dinner when literally half of what he ends up bringing home is frozen meals and pasta sauce, but no pasta. I've brought it up to him, but Dad keeps saying that if I would just make time to go with him, or if I went on my own, it would probably be easier to get what we needed. I said that we could switch jobs, so he takes the boys to their things and I get groceries, but he said he doesn't know their schedules and he wouldn't want to mess it up for them. He said he'd go grocery shopping today and asked me to go with him, but I was working on some stuff for my finals before I had to drive the 10-year-old and the 8-year-old to their practices, so I couldn't go. I started making the list like I usually do, but because I didn't want to end up with only half of what I had put on there, I went and printed the layout of the grocery store. I even went online and found out which aisle each product was supposed to be on, and I color-coded the stuff he needed to get. I left it for him on the table and then went to take the boys. While I was doing schoolwork during their practice, my dad called me, asking why I felt the need to color-code a map for him like he was a toddler in need of specific instruction. I replied saying that I only thought the map might make it easier for him to find the things I put on the list, since I also made sure that everything was in stock online. It's been hours since we've gotten back home, and he's very clearly upset with me, but he did get the stuff on the list this time. I don't know. I think maybe I just made him feel like an idiot, and that's why he's upset. Was the map thing a little too much? Not the jerk. Your dad is asking too much of you, and he's avoiding his responsibility as the parent. He could and should learn their schedules. He just doesn't want to. You should have a serious talk with him about how he either steps up or he hires help. Can't justify paying me? No problem. Just before lockdown, I worked for a small telecom company that did contract work for a national cell carrier. We'll call them Crap Inc. and Big Wireless. I was hired on as a full-time employee for Crab Inc. along with every other technician, and we were not contractors. Important later. I was good at my job. I've been in the field for over 20 years, so I knew my stuff, and most problems were easy enough to troubleshoot and repair. But sometimes we needed a second tech to help out with bigger issues, which is understandable in our field. Crab Inc. was shady, unbeknownst to us at the bottom of the ladder, but we were about to find out. About 4 months in, new orders came down the chain that from henceforth, we were to do double trips on every ticket. This meant we had to drive out with no parts, assess a problem, then make a return trip with parts to fix it. 2 trips equals double pay for the company. Even on simple things like pushing a reset button. 2 trips, no excuses. Then they began cutting our hours, tracking our every move, and redoing our timesheets after submitting it, with the excuse of, employees are stealing time and we're going to prove it. The latest rule was a good one. All employees must work at least 2 tickets each day in order to be considered for a full 8 hours of pay and 40 hours per week. No ticket, no pay. With this, they began holding mandatory bi-weekly meetings to go over every minute of our trips, overlaying GPS data, timestamps, travel distance, etc. They docked pay for gas station stops, bathroom breaks, phone calls, everything. They even tried to not pay us for these very meetings because our trucks were off and couldn't prove we were working. Buddy, I'm not a contractor. I'm a full-time employee. Enter glorious malicious compliance. See, the thing is, I don't take too kindly to people stealing from my paycheck and gaslighting me about it. And apparently, the other employees felt the same way. Give me one solid night of prep work and I'll beat you at your own game. The next weekend, I held a meeting of my own with the techs. and after some explanation, we all decided that the company was absolutely right. 2 trips, 2 tickets, every minute accounted for, and the GPS data to prove it. Monday morning, meeting rolls around, and every tech drove to the nearest site to have our mandatory 2-hour meeting. The trucks aren't at home and running the entire time. Our daily tickets come in, and we drive directly to the site, idle for 2 hours while we check out the problem, then do our second trip to get the parts, as instructed, and spend 2 hours fixing it, drive time not included. A second daily ticket comes in, and what's this? I can't seem to figure out the problem. I guess I'll have to call another tech who only had 1 ticket to help me. Glad he was free. Let's ponder this problem for 2 hours while wasting fuel. Now we need parts. Looks like we both have to go get them. Return trip complete. Another 2 hours to fix the problem. Let's see how we did. First ticket, 2 hours assessment plus 1 hour travel time, GPS logged. 2-hour return trip plus 1 hour travel time, GPS logged. Second ticket, same thing, all logged. Hey boss, Crab Inc. owes every tech 64 hours of work this week. Let's check the math and GPS logs just to be sure. Oh, and for some reason, the fuel expenses went up. But at least we have the GPS data you need for our extremely accurate PowerPoint presentation. Update per request. Crab Inc. folded from embezzlement, misappropriation of lockdown funds, and sued by Big Wireless for 2 trips, no excuse, among other things. There were a few jail sentences handed out. Not sure if anyone got a piece of that pie. Am I the jerk for giving my future mother-in-law an ultimatum around paying for our wedding venue? I, Victoria, 32, female, am marrying Alex, 48, male, in 2024. We live on the East Coast, but are both from the southern United States, and Alex's family is essentially royalty in their hometown. His parents have a very visible local business, sponsor kids' sports teams, tithe heavily in church, and have their own jingle in commercials. Alex's mother, Frida, decided right away that I'm a gold digger because I come from a tiny town that she refers to as a patch of dirt in the middle of nowhere, and my government salary, which is public record, is less than half of Alex's, though we're both government attorneys. She constantly goes between making digs about my bland wardrobe to making a big deal out of buying me things like coffee and implying that I should be grateful that she and his father Fred are so generous and can do things like host us over the holidays. At Thanksgiving, Alex and I said that we were close to finding a venue, but the one we were looking at had quoted us $25,000, which we didn't want to pay. Not because we didn't have the money, but because it was just out of our stated budget. Frida immediately said that of course Alex wouldn't want to pay that since he'd be paying all by himself, and made a show of telling us that she and Fred would pay for the wedding. At the same time, they said that they expected us to get a prenup because Alex needed to protect himself and his family in case anything happened. We were going to do one anyway, so we shrugged and agreed. Frida immediately began telling everyone in town that she and Fred were paying for the whole wedding, and people kept coming up to me with thinly disguised sympathy to say how nice it must be to have a dream wedding due to Frida's generosity. Alex and I engaged counsel and have been passing our prenup between ourselves and our lawyers. Frida pestered Alex about it so much that he finally told her the holdup is with my counsel because my assets are more complicated to deal with than his. Even though he's told her before that I'm not a gold digger and didn't need his money, it apparently didn't sink in until now. She looked up everything from my property records to salary scales at my old big law firm and apparently realized that I'm worth nearly as much as she and Fred are. When she confronted me, I told her that she could either pay for the venue and I would continue to publicly agree with everyone that she was being generous to her new daughter-in-law, or that she could back out. We had changed venues, and then I'd explain to everyone that she thought I had too much money. She hates both of these options, since one involves losing money, she thought she could lord over me, and the other involves losing face, since she told everyone in town I don't have any money and I'm after Alex's. So she ran off to bed with a migraine. Alex thinks I'm being too harsh on her, but I'm not so sure. Not the jerk, but you have to seriously consider marrying into a family like this. What you need to find out is where Alex stands with his parents and what his values are versus theirs. Is he a mama's boy that lets his mom make all the decisions for him, and he defers all decisions to her and his father? If he does, then you really need to think twice about marrying him. He needs to cut the apron strings and back you as his wife, future wife. You basically need to know that he will have your back and will stand up for you. And even to the point where he will limit contact with his parents if they manipulate and gaslight. What do you think is going to happen when you have kids? Is grandma deciding how to bring up your own kids? Does Alex have any siblings with kids? What's their relationship with his parents? Have you spent time with them to get an idea of how controlling everyone is? Or do the kids' parents decide how they want to parent their kids? Has Alex been married before or had a long-term relationship? Does he have any kids? He's not old, but he's not young either. Does he want any? Do you? The ultimatum you gave your mother-in-law is neither here nor there. It's a lot of money, but may not be a lot if you're rich. It's the marriage that's important. If mother-in-law wants to plan your wedding as though it was hers, perhaps having an earlier small wedding in a location that's important to you is something worth considering, even eloping. You don't want someone else taking over. Even if you win against your mother-in-law when it comes to wedding decisions, can you be so sure that she won't try and sabotage it? Or that she'll wear black and a dour demeanor when making everyone around her miserable on your wedding day? This should take about 2 years. I work as a compliance officer at a company that needs to prove compliance to a government body and a certifying body. Our processes are designed in order to create that evidence. When I joined the company, I quickly noticed that the product development teams were not going by the process and were not documenting and generating the required evidence. I went to talk to their manager about it, and he told me we are very busy and we will get to it when we can. I explained to him that this project has been going on for 2 years already and will be done in 14 months. You cannot retroactively go back in time and try to create 2 years worth of evidence. He replied, "Your stuff is not real issues, and I'm only concerned if there is a problem with the product." I explained to him that without this evidence, we cannot certify the product and put it on the market. He smirked and said, "That's your problem, now isn't it? Do your worst." I admit a part of me wanted to resign after that conversation to avoid being associated with a potentially bad product or a failure to launch. Then it hit me. As part of the process, we should raise non-compliances as issues in the system. So I went to work. I reviewed all of their work and evidence, and anything that was wrong or missing, I logged an issue against. I raised nearly 2,000 issues and have been reporting them to the VP and president of the company. He came screaming to me and threatened if I don't stop and put them as tasks for me to complete instead of issues, he will have me fired. I refused. A week later, we were having a meeting with my boss, his boss, the VP, and the president. He and his boss went on a rant about how I was trying to destroy the project and make us miss our timelines, and how I should take ownership of making us compliant. I replied, "I'm just following the processes and regulations, but if you really want me to change these issues to tasks, I don't mind, but we need to do it the right way." I went on to explain that they need to submit the change request, which will need to be reviewed and approved by a panel. Of course, their request will drive changes to our processes, so it will need to go to the governance board. These changes will go against regulations, so we will need to file for an exemption before we implement them. Assuming we receive it, we will have to update and release all our processes again, which we do only in July. This meeting happened in August. After that, I can go change all of the issues to tasks. Since I'm not working on the product, I'll need members of their teams to be freed up over 2 years so I can document the work they failed to document. This whole thing should take about 2 years. Until then, I would have to hold them to the current process, assuming, of course, we receive the exemption. My boss, the VP, and president were all chuckling as the other guys' faces turned red in anger. They started to scream at me, but the president stopped them and ordered them to comply, and he will personally check it happened. Since they were riding their teams hard and committed to aggressive timelines, the team ignored the documentation still. They both got fired and replaced, and the president negotiated different timelines with the customer and paid for the late fees. I don't care if you have a kid at home. Mine needs it more. First, a little backstory. My wife, female 32, and I, male 36, had our first kid this year. A heck of a year for a kid that needs to have formula, let alone that formula having to be sensitive. We're always searching everywhere near us for formula every time that we start running low, and usually we'll try to grab 2 of the largest containers we can get, making sure to keep within the store's guidelines on how many they will let customers have. I want to feed my kid, but I don't want to take from others who may need it also. so that way we can make sure that we always have food for him. Which leads me to the beginning of the week. We were searching again because our stores were running low and we would need more before the middle of the week. Searches for generic sensitive were leading us to maybe having to take a trip out of state just so that we can feed our son. We checked one more time through the Walmart app, and in one of the locations in our town, they had the formula. I rushed over to the store hoping that they had not sold out. I got there, and luckily they had it. I grabbed 2 and called my wife to see if she wanted me to get more. They had 10 in total, and the store had a limit of 6. She told me to only get 2 because she didn't want to have others do without. So I hung up and put them into my cart. When I did, I heard the most shrill, "What do you think you're doing?" I turn around and I see a woman who looks older than me. I could be wrong. I've always been kind of crap at guessing ages. She says to give the formula to her because she needed it for her kid and I must be reselling it. I looked at her and nervous laugh a little and say, "No, I have a son and he needs this formula." She just replied to me that she doesn't give a hoot and that her baby needs it more. I look at her and say, "No, I'm taking this because my son needs it. There are 8 more on the shelf and the limit is 6 to be fair to others." She's having none of it, pushing to my cart to take my son's food. I made sure to protect it and made sure to move the cart in a way that she couldn't act like I was being aggressive and trying to get her. I'm a bigger guy, and some would call me scary and intimidating because I have a resting jerk face. This set her off, and she started screaming that I was stealing from her and her kid, that I wanted her kid to starve because I was just reselling the formula. I walked away before I would lose my cool, and she started following me through the store, trying to get people to force me to give her the formula that she needed so badly. She finally found a manager and started trying to keep me there. I simply said that I am within the limit, and while she was focused on them, I booked it. She must have looked around and couldn't find me because she started screaming, and I heard how loud she was. While people were heading towards her, I calmly, but with a little faster pace, made my way to the checkout and paid. With my son's food, I got in my car and laid low for a few seconds, not knowing if she found me and kept following. As I was pulling out of my spot in my rearview mirror, I saw her running out of the front door, looking wildly to see if I was still there. I pulled out of there while calling my wife to tell her all about this, and it looked like she was seething. All I have to say is, thank God that the Walmart is on the opposite side of town. I do kind of feel a little bad, because in the back of my mind, I have the thoughts of, what if they really needed it? But I have to feed my son. It's my responsibility as a parent. I got you a souvenir. Oh yeah? Well, I got you fired from the post office. Background. Sit back and enjoy a story about some revenge I achieved at the U.S. Postal Service back in the 1990s that cost a bullying full-time carrier his union job. In summer of 1991, I found a summer job as a casual carrier for the U.S. Post Office. They used to hire summer temps to cover for all the full-time carriers who mostly took their vacations in the summer. The USPS has rules that things have to be delivered within certain time windows. People could get fired if they took too long to do tasks. Carriers were both openly and secretly monitored and timed on tasks, and we had the first computerized time system I ever saw. They would be secretly followed a few times per year to be sure they were working hard the entire time they were outside the post office. The post office building even had secret back hallways, passive sound monitoring, and hidden raised viewing areas where they could see the sorting floor unobserved. Cameras and microphones were really expensive back then, so this was all done using tricky architecture and the eyes and ears of the postal inspectors. We were supposed to walk over and punch in and out of tasks so that they could track productivity to the second. People walking a delivery route were expected to do it fast, and better routes went to faster carriers. Slow carriers got mercilessly hassled to be faster and were disciplined for slowness. Pre-internet, there used to be a huge volume of mail that got shuffled around the country every day. Quantities of mail that you would find hard to believe compared to what we see now. I was a broke college student home for the summer and was willing to work any hours they gave me, so the supervisors liked me. I was also very friendly with most of the full-time carriers because I was a good worker and didn't rock the boat. Also, the other reasons that you'll see below. I'm a fairly big guy, 6'5" or 195 centimeters, about 210 pounds back then, and I could carry a lot of weight, so that also made management happy. I was also in my early 20s with long legs, so I could move fast carrying a lot of weight. Sorting mail back then was labor intensive and took a lot of time to learn. I had a regular route that I would deliver in the afternoons that was sorted by a regular. I would usually do oddball delivery stuff in the mornings, help move heavy things around, do special deliveries, etc. I would also deliver for full-time carriers that went on vacation or whose T6 was on vacation. Side note, mail delivery is 6 times per week, but full-time carriers only work 5 days per week. The T6 is a full-time carrier who did the 6th day for 5 routes. That way, it worked out that everyone only worked 5 days per week. At the time, a lot of retail catalogs were mailed to houses, a lot of them. Some were substantially bigger than current magazines. We also delivered magazines, ads, packages, and samples. A lot of companies would mail free samples of products like laundry detergent, shampoo, and other liquids to be delivered to every house on the route. These were the bane of the carrier's existence because they were bulky and heavy. This slows you down and is physically taxing. Usually, carriers would divide the very heavy stuff up and deliver it throughout the week. On to the revenge. I was assigned to do the T6 work for Dave, name changed, for a few months. Oh, Dave. Picture a failed phys ed teacher in his 40s, bad mustache, around 5'7", wore knockoff sunglasses like Magnum PIs, and had an opinion about everything. Dave learns he has me as his T6 and decides he will leave all of the heavy stuff for me. So once a week, I got confronted with the entire week's worth of heavy mail for this jerk's route. I confronted him about it, and he basically laughed and said there was nothing I could do about it. The other full-time carriers didn't like Dave much, but I was a temp, and he was there permanently, so I was encouraged to just suck it up. I went to our boss and escalated to our postmaster, but was told that he was full-time and I was a temp, so I just had to deal with it. If the mail needed to be delivered that day to meet the deadline, I had to make it happen. The postmaster's exact words were, "Just deliver every piece of mail for the route as fast as you can, and don't worry about the time it takes or anything else. You're making huge overtime on this route." They did talk to Dave, and the most egregious stuff stopped, but I was still doing most of the hard work on this route. I mentioned earlier that everyone was always on the clock and tracked. In my first week, some of the nicer people took me aside at the beginning of the summer and made it clear to me that I was not to move quickly when delivering full-time carriers' routes because it could make them look bad and cause trouble for them. As a temp, I should always take longer than the full-time carriers because 1, my job was limited and the USPS did not really track temps closely. 2, I had 0 experience, so everything should take me longer. 3, this was a union shop, and they would hate to have to kick my butt for messing up their jobs. And 4, most of these people were awesome and I wanted to be a team player. So I was incentivized to move slowly and not make the full-time people look bad. Side note, I am very pro-union and pro-labor, so this is not intended to knock unions, but the context is needed. I decided to wreck Dave's job since he was such a bullying little tool. I requisitioned 2 additional mail carrier bags. These are the over-the-shoulder satchels you see all the time. I was asked why, and I specifically told them it was to be able to carry all of the heavy items on Dave's route without having to keep going back to my Jeep to reload along the way. The postmaster personally approved it. After doing Dave's route 1 to 3 times per week, he called in sick a lot too. For a few weeks, I knew it very well and was staying on top of the heavy stuff. Once I was comfortable with the route, I started running it. I would literally load up 3 mail bags for each segment of the route and jog or run his entire route. Dave's route took him about 4.5 hours per day to walk. This was probably accurate for him, and he had been on the route for several years. I would finish it in 3 hours or less, every day, rain or shine, no matter how many magazines, samples, or packages were waiting. No one really noticed I was coming back so quickly and punching back out of delivering his route when I was only doing it a few times per week. I would come back, pick up the other work, and get that done. The fun started when Dave took a 2-week vacation and I handled his route 6 days per week. Since I was doing the work right, there was never a backlog of heavy items landing on me once per week. This made it even easier to jog or run his route as I was back to using 1 mail bag and fast walking/jogging was enough to get it done quickly. I frequently got it done in under 3 hours and never took longer than about 3.5 hours. My personal best was under 2.5 hours. I got pulled aside by my supervisor and the postmaster after the first week. They asked me about my timekeeping practices, and I confirmed that I was doing things correctly. I would punch into his route on departure, keep the appropriate logs, and punch back in when I got back. The postmaster then asked me about Dave's route. I played completely dumb. He noted that I complained about the mail volume several weeks ago and that I used to take 6 or 7 or more hours to get it delivered. I explained that I was spreading the heavier deliveries out over the whole week, and that had really made a difference. He asked me if I was really delivering all the mail and whether I was hiding or throwing away mail, a serious problem if true. I got very offended and told him I delivered every piece of mail for the route every day. Then I dropped the bomb. I told him I was having trouble understanding why this route was budgeted 4.5 hours to deliver when it clearly could be done much faster than that. I pointed out that it was a lot of dense multifamily housing, which means less walking. I told him lots of people on the route seemed surprised that I did not want a soda pop or to sit down and talk for a minute like Dave always did with them. Pure lies. All in my innocent, "Gosh, I want to help the USPS" voice. I told the postmaster that I was delivering all the mail as fast as I could and not worrying about anything else. I jogged the route again for the next 6 days and kept getting it done in much less time than Dave. Dave did not know about any of this. He made a point of finding me on his first day back to ask how I enjoyed doing all the hard work for him while he was vacationing. I told him I'd learned a lesson about how to treat your coworkers. He laughed at me and went back to sorting mail. He came back a few minutes later and said he got me a souvenir. He then pulled his long finger out of his pocket. Classic Dave. That was my last week at the USPS, and I headed back to college. I kept in touch with some of my friends I had made there, and one of them was very happy to tell me that Dave was fired about 2 months after I left. Due to the massive discrepancy in how long it took me and him to deliver the route, the higher-ups audited his route and discovered that he actually was lollygagging, taking unauthorized breaks, and apparently having an affair with a woman on his route. All on the clock. I, on the other hand, was in great physical shape after all that running and had pockets full of cash for that semester. His regular T6 also got most of the heavy stuff dumped on her, so she didn't get into any trouble for her delivery times because she was swamped with heavy mail on her day. She actually bid for and got the route full-time when Dave was shown the door. I have more stories of my glorious summer at the USPS, but crushing Dave is one of the high points.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.